While there's been a ton of focus on the Democratic presidential primary, and rightly so, there have been some really bad new polls for incumbent Republican senators that I want to tell you about today. One involves our favorite, perpetually disappointed Republican senator from Maine, Susan Collins, who, despite her concern and her disappointment over Donald Trump's actions, ultimately always falls in line and supports him, whether it's voting against impeaching Trump, convicting Trump on impeachment, whether it's ultimately voting for Brett Kavanaugh. Well, Susan Collins is now down 4 points in a new poll against her Democratic challenger, Sara Gideon. Admittedly, that's a Democratic leaning poll, but she's also down to Sara Gideon in a recent Colby College poll. It would be a major accomplishment if we were able to remove Susan Collins. She's been in the Senate. She won in 1996, sworn in January of 97. She won her reelections pretty easily in 2002, in 2008, in 2014. In recent polls, her challenger, Sara Gideon, is up by 1 in a Colby College poll, 43 to 42, a lot of undecided there. And then in a more recent PPP poll, an admittedly Dem-leaning poll, Gideon is up by 4, 47 to 43. Then we go to Arizona. In Arizona, we've got incumbent Republican Senator Martha McSally facing a challenge from astronaut Mark Kelly, whose twin brother Scott Kelly has been a guest on this program. And there, once again, in a Predictive Insights poll, Kelly was up 3 in December. That's an old poll by now. And then a few days ago in a PPP poll, Mark Kelly up 5, 47 to 42. Still many undecideds there as well. But this is not good news for the Republican candidates. There are just two. These are just two of the Senate races we're looking at where Republicans could be replaced by Democratic challengers. So the message here is, while we pay attention to and work on the Democratic primary and eventually the fight to remove Donald Trump in November, we shouldn't forget about the fact that it's possible, but it's an uphill battle, but it's possible to take the Senate from Republicans in 2020. And even if it's unlikely, any seat we can win in 2020 is a seat that doesn't need to be made up in 2022, when hopefully Democrats will be able to take control of the Senate. We don't know how, Biden versus Bernie as nominees will affect the down ballot, the House and Senate races. We can't control how a good or bad economy in November could help or hurt down ballot races. But when we have these numbers, this tells us we have to be working on these races. Now, a lot of people will rightly point out, are these really progressive Democrats in these races? They'll say, Mark Kelly hasn't said a word about single payer. Sara Gideon wants to expand Medicaid and add a public option. It's basically the Biden position on healthcare. That's completely true. And yet these folks would be orders of magnitude better than the Republicans that are currently in place, period. And we don't want to miss the forest for the trees on these Senate races. That's my view. Now, tell me if you disagree. And at this point, if you try to push someone else into the Democratic race to get a real progressive in there, I believe it's guaranteed the Republicans get reelected. I think these are the candidates in these races to remove Republicans. If you disagree, I want to hear from you. I just don't see it. I just don't see how you make that work at this point in time.